Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Stephanie. Today I am here with a better late than never March reading wrap up. It is April 11th while I'm filming this. I don't know where the time went. March was such an interesting reading month for me because I feel like the beginning was so drastically different from the end, and I feel like I can split the month up into two drastically different experiences. The first being like a really rough reading month, getting into a little bit of a reading slump. And then in the second half of the month, really even like the last week of the month, I found a new 5-star book, a couple of 4.5s, and I was reading books really quickly because I did my reading 200 pages a day video. Definitely really interesting up and down type of month. I also had made a TBR from my TBR jar for March. I definitely did not do as well as I did for February. I only read 2 out of the 8 books, so I decided not to do a monthly TBR this month and just to do a seasonal TBR, which I already posted a couple of videos ago. With all of that being said, let's talk about the books that I read in March. So I started off with a book that I only have on my Kindle. It's a part of a series. It's Hothouse Flower by Krista and Becca Richie. This is book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Addicted Calloway Sisters universe. This is from the point of view of 2 characters that we haven't heard from before yet in the series, Daisy and Reich. I have been slowly getting through the Addicted series, and up until now, I had given all of the Addicted books that I'd read 3 stars. They were okay, but they were not my favorite as far as writing. It was taking me just some time to grow connected to the characters and really care about everything that was going on. But this book, Daisy and Reich's point of view, is what really solidified that I'm genuinely enjoying the series. I loved hearing from both of their points of view. I really connected with both of them as characters. Daisy is the youngest sister in this group of sisters. You've watched her grow up over the course of a couple of years, and you really get to see her come into her own in this book. Reich has been kind of a mysterious character up until this point, so you kind of get to be in his head and see what's going on that's typically in the background. So I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed their romance story. Hothouse Flower was a solid 4-star for me. Then I started the Inheritance Games trilogy. So I read the first book, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book was, up until probably like the 80-ish% mark, I felt very indifferent about this book. I felt like it was just okay. Obviously, the premise is extremely unrealistic, and I felt like the characters were just adapting to this so crazy thing that's happened, because basically this random stranger who is 17 years old, Avery, is given a billionaire's entire estate over all of his children and grandchildren, and they have no idea who she is. She has no idea who they are, and she basically has to go and live in the house because it's her house now. And I felt like she was very much just like, okay, like, I guess that's what's going on. And I was just like, damn girl, like, you're not really questioning this enough. So I kept like going back to that, and it was just kind of in my head and bothering me throughout the story. But this also it's a scavenger hunt type of vibe. It's like a Knives Out Clue thing where this billionaire has set up this game and puzzle and thing that you have to figure out to get your inheritance, and it's all just like a little bit weird. But the end of this book, incredible. The ending was so good. I was pretty set on a 3-star for this book. Ending pushed it up to a 4. Really enjoyed the ending of this. Also, with Jennifer Lynn Barnes, I read the whole Natural series from her, and I remember not being a fan of the first book because I felt like it was just kind of lacking in the same way that I felt like this was. But I will say I like the storyline of The Naturals a little bit better. But my point is that books 2 and 3 of The Naturals I thought were amazing. So I'm definitely going to read the next book, especially after that ending. I'm surprised that I didn't pick it up right away, but I think it was because I was filming that Kindle Unlimited video. So I was reading other things, but I definitely am gonna go back to this soon. And then next I read The Golden Couple by Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkanen. This is a thriller about a therapist who is no longer a therapist because her license was taken away for extremely unethical and strange practices. So her license was taken away, so now she's a life coach, because you're able to be a life coach without a license. So she's still seeing people. This couple ends up going to see her for relationship counseling. The couple is like a super rich, wealthy, like perfect seeming couple, and I thought that this book was really going to delve into the therapist and why and how she got to this place of her methods being so strange. But this book honestly mainly focused on the couple and kind of the domestic mystery of what was going on with them, and that was a little bit of a disappointment to me because I was thinking it was going to be about the therapist. But once I kind of realized that it wasn't going to be, and I took it for what it was, I ended up, you know, reading it quickly. I enjoyed it. It was one of those thrillers that was just like, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't the most well written. It wasn't the most shocking, but it was a thriller, so I was interested in what was going on, and it by all means wasn't terrible. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. And then I wanted to move on to a different genre. I wanted to try something else. So I finally picked up Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a young adult romantasy. This is the first book in what is going to be a trilogy. You're basically in this dystopian world where I don't remember if it's like a disease or some kind of plague. It's a plague. A plague came upon people and left certain individuals with powers, magic, elemental type of control. Some people were not given powers by this plague, and they're called ordinaries, and then the people with powers are called elites. Well, the people with really good powers are called elites, and then the people with like okay powers are called mundanes. But eventually there is a turning point with the kingdom, and suddenly there's this like whole new political regime in place where ordinaries are being killed off. They are no longer allowed to live. It's illegal to be an ordinary. If you're an ordinary, you're gonna die. In fact, the king has appointed people to basically be poachers for ordinaries. So you're meant to like go out and kill ordinaries. So in this book, you're following Peyton, who's an ordinary, and Kai, who is the son of the king, who's basically being like bred to become one of those like poachers. And in this world, there are trials to celebrate the plague that brought the magic, and so elites and mundanes are picked to compete in these trials, basically to show off their magic. They're not necessarily meant to be deadly like Hunger Games, but they're meant to like show off your powers, and like if people die, like Peyton has been posing as a psychic because she doesn't want to get killed because she's an ordinary. She's homeless, and she pretends to be a psychic because it's so hard to prove if you're a psychic or not. And she ends up getting put into these trials, and her and Kai, their paths cross. He does not know that she's an ordinary, and she does know that he is meant to kill her. There are also other side characters in here who have relationships. It's obviously very, very high stakes as the romance develops between the two of them, because it's basically somebody who is a killer and the person who is supposed to be killed, but Kai really doesn't want to be this killer, so it's a very like interesting back and forth thing. You get first person dual points of view, which is awesome. Best way to tell a fantasy, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the writing, really enjoyed the storyline. I felt that it was really interesting. I liked learning about this world. I liked going through the trials. I liked Peyton and Kai's relationship. I liked Kai's brother. I liked the side characters. The ending was definitely really wild. I'm super excited for the next book, and I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. And then this is when things really started to change. So I read Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver, and this was 5 stars for me. This is a romance between 2 vigilante serial killers. So you're following Rowan and Sloan. They're both serial killers, but they only kill really, really bad people, murderers, other types of really depraved people who do really bad things. They are vigilantes. They both have their reasons for having gone down this path. You learn them. It's very interesting. They meet because they go to kill the same serial killer, and Rowan finds Sloane trapped in a cage. He lets her out and they end up realizing who the other is, and they have this like really funny fangirl moment over each other where he's like, oh my god, you're the orb weaver, holy shit, I love your work. And she does the same thing, and they end up keeping in touch, and they decide they're going to meet up once a year to do something together. You get both points of view, first person again, and I just absolutely ate up and adored this book. I loved both of these characters so much. I have, it's always an internal debate with myself when I say that I connected with them so much, because of course they're vigilante serial killers, but you see all of the other parts and sides of them and those things, and I felt really connected to the characters in that way. This book is also really funny. It's definitely a rom-com. There's a ton of humor in here, and I felt like it was definitely my humor, definitely like some dark humor that I thought was like really, really well done. The writing of this was fantastic. I loved everything about this. There were also some really beautiful quotes in here, and the romance was genuinely so sweet, even though it was between two vigilante serial killers. There are some parts in this book that get slightly graphic because obviously the material is what it is, but there are content and trigger warnings in the front of the book, so take a look at those, see if it seemed like slight mentions of those things would be okay for you, and if they would be, read this book, because this was a 100% 5 out of 5 stars for me. One of my new favorite books. I'm so glad that I picked this up, because genuinely I would not have picked this up, but I kept hearing so much hype about it and I just got curious, and I'm so happy that I did. So that was my 5-star. Then I read, which one did I read next? I believe next was Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This is a thriller that I've had on my shelves for a while. I think this was a 2022 release, and she just released her next book like last week. So this is a missing person thriller, obviously. It's basically about this mother and daughter who go missing. They have been gone for, I think it's like 11 years. And then the daughter comes back. The case had gone cold. People thought that maybe the dad had killed them, and there was like tons of crazy theories. But then the girl comes back. And it's really interesting. You get the point of view of the mom back when they went missing. You get the point of view of, in the beginning, the daughter, but then you don't get her again. You get the mom and a neighbor in the past timeline. And the only current timeline you're getting is the brother, the little brother of the girl who came back. So it's really, really interesting. You're basically trying to figure out what happened to her, what happened to her mom, how all of these pieces connect. It was a really, really good thriller. It was well written. It kept me on my toes. I read it really, really quickly. I did feel a little bit let down by the ending, but I think that was just like a personal thing. I felt like there was one little storyline that didn't have the best wrap up, but I know there are people who absolutely love how this book ended, so definitely give it a shot. As far as thrillers go, it was a pretty good one. I gave it 4 stars. And then I picked up another young adult fantasy. This is The Prison Healer. I've also had this one on my TBR for a while. So this is about a girl named Kiva who had been sent to a hardcore lockdown security prison, and it's in this fantasy world where people have elemental powers. Either you can control fire, water, wind, or air, fire, water, and earth. This girl, she has been in this prison for 10 years. She's 17, and everyone in the prison has a job, and her job is to be a healer. Now, the only people with these types of magic are royal royal bloodlines. No one else has magic. So when I say she's a healer, she's just like practicing medicine. So she's been working since she was 7 years old as a healer in the prison. There is a rebellion going on outside of the prison walls where there's this other bloodline that wants to try to claim the throne in this kingdom, and they are starting this rebellion, and they capture the leader of this rebellion, the rebel queen, and they take her to the prison, and Kiva is tasked with healing her. When you're in this prison, you can be sentenced to an elemental trial, I think it's called, and trial by ordeal. So she is expected to go through these like 4 elemental challenges that basically are kind of guaranteed to kill you. I don't think anyone has actually survived them. It's basically like a crazy version of the death penalty, and that is what she is sentenced to. So Kiva has to keep her alive until these trials happen. The entire thing takes place in this prison, so it's very easy to follow. I really liked that the world building and the fantasy elements are definitely more like spoon-fed to you with this book. I found that I was able to read it quickly and not be confused by the world building, but still be interested in it. And it's told in a third person single point of view, but the writing is so genuinely good in this book that I didn't find myself noticing that it was third person, because it wasn't something that was confusing my brain. When they were saying she, I was able to tell which she that she was talking about, that they were talking about, if you know what I mean. I really, really liked this book. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. The ending was wild, amazing setup for the second book. I actually started the second book and I'm 140 pages in right now. I wanted to go right to it because this was really, really, really good. I definitely recommend it as far as a like simple fantasy. If you are someone who reads epic fantasies and you've gone really deep into the fantasy genre, this probably is not gonna do it for you. But for someone like me who is still in the intro portion of my fantasy journey, I thought that this was great. I definitely will continue on with the series. Again, 4.5. The last book that I physically read was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tinterra. This was my book of the month for February. No, March. This was my book of the month for March. It says it on the back. So handy. So this is a thriller that is based around a true crime podcast. I feel like there are more and more of those coming out, and I do like those types of books. I find them really interesting. So you are basically following this main character named Lucy, who has been accused of murdering her best friend, like 4-ish years prior. She was accused of murdering her best friend, Savannah. She was found roaming the streets with blood on her the night that Savannah had died, and she had complete amnesia. She still, to this day, 4 years later, is claiming that she has no idea what happened, and it's interesting because she's not denying that she could have been the one to kill her. She's straight up, she's not saying no. She's saying straight up, I don't remember, and like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Obviously, there wasn't enough evidence to convict her, but the people in the town still really believe that she did it. So she had left the town, and now she's coming back because her grandmother is having like a milestone birthday, and she's close to her grandma, but it's the first time she's back in this town in 4 years. And she starts being interviewed by this guy who's doing this true crime podcast, trying to figure out what happened to Savannah. What I really liked about this book is that the main character, Lucy, had such a sense of humor. She was very like sarcastic and snarky, and in the beginning I wasn't sure if I was going to like love that type of humor, but I actually found it really, really enjoyable. I really liked reading about her. I appreciated Lucy as a character a lot. The actual like case aspect of it was very interesting. I flew through this book so quickly. I felt like the ending and the wrap up and the plot twists were okay. Not amazing, but okay. But just the fact of how well written this book was and how much I liked Lucy as a character, I would definitely recommend this. I gave it 4 stars. So definitely solid thriller. And then last but not least, I want to talk about an audiobook that I finished listening to. This was actually more towards the beginning of the month. So I listened to Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. So I listened to this fully on audio, and I still kind of to this day, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this book. It's a fictionalized retelling of the Ted Bundy case. And the idea of a fictional retelling of a real case was a little bit strange to me, but ultimately there are a lot of books that mirror real life things that have happened, and she is just being upfront about it. So I was like, I'll give it a chance. And I also heard that it was very much focused on the victims and not the killer, which I was like, okay, I'm really like curious as to how this goes. So I will say I didn't love Jessica Knoll's writing style. I felt like the storytelling was like a little harsh. Like it just wasn't, it kind of reminded me of Gillian Flynn's writing, if that makes sense. It was very similar to that. It's just a little bit like rough, a little bit harsh. So listening to that on audio was like, it was slightly off-putting because you could like really hear the tone. You're following multiple points of view. You're following 2 or 3, oh God, I don't even remember, and I don't have the book to reference it, and I also have auditory processing issues, so when I feel like I fully listen to a whole thing on audio, there is a lot that doesn't stay in my head. But I'm trying to remember, I believe you're following 2 or 3 of these women who were either directly or indirectly affected by this serial killer's crimes. You're basically trying to figure out how they all tie together. You're in a then and now timeline of 2 of his different crimes, one being a college campus and a female dormitory of a sorority, and then you're going back many, many years to another crime that happened where women were being hurt in the same way, and they're trying to figure out if it's the same person or not. Someone from the past comes back to speak with one of the people, the women from the future. There's some very, very strange side plots of these women and their own like personal stories that are just kind of like interesting but random, but like why? I don't know. And I kind of just felt like at a point I was listening to it just to know what happened and just to complete it. I could not figure out if I was really enjoying it or not. But then at the end, when everything wrapped up and I realized kind of what we were getting at and what the point ultimately was, I kind of got it and I appreciated it more for what it was. And there was definitely more of a focus on the victims and these, you know, young women whose lives were taken away for no reason, and how complex and wonderful that, you know, those people are. I really, really appreciated that, and I thought that that was great. But because of the other things that I said before, I decided to settle on 3 stars for it. My actual experience was more like a 2, but after finishing it and really processing the story, I had to give it another star just for, like I said, my general appreciation for the message. That is everything that I read in March. Like I said, better late than never. I hope that you still enjoyed this. If you like watching book videos and reading vlogs, definitely subscribe to my channel if you would like, and I will see you in my next one.